lineage, talking about family trauma, and this is what we'll move into with intergenerational trauma and addiction with Miss Angel Baker. So I'm going to welcome her up.
I believe. Yes, thank you so much. Is this on? Can you hear me? That is my song. That song carried me through some challenges in life. And much of what's related to my topic today, intergenerational trauma and addiction. Let me first say that I want to thank Ms. Bunn for inviting me here today, and I want to give a big shout out to our millennials in here who are, as you mentioned, they're doing this thing. You know, yeah, I am a boomer, and you know, as the other lady mentioned, during her time in the private sector, there were a lot of things that were barriers for us to move forward, and especially as Black women. And, you know, through the generations, we have been able to break some of these barriers. And I hope you guys can appreciate the barriers that have been broken for you millennials to do what you're doing today, you know, and to know that it was a struggle with some of us. As I sit here, I just turned 65, and so, you know, there were a lot of things that I had to do different in the workplace, in the home, and in school. But today I realize that some of those struggles that we have experienced opened the door for my daughter, who's getting her doctorate today, and, you know, and you all here. So, how did I get here? Well, you know, my grandmother was a psychiatric nurse, and this was before you had to have a college degree or anything. You know, she went to school, she took nursing classes, and she was that nurse that you saw walking up and down the street with the white uniform on and the hat, you know. And it's so funny, when I go to get an EKG, I say, Dag, I remember when they had the little suction cups that they put on your chest. And I used to help her, and my job was to help wipe the cream off of the patients. So yeah, you know, today you can't do that. And you know, things are so modernized now, and that's really good. But I got this from my grandmother. My interest in working in this field of mental health came from watching my grandmother, who was really like my mother. My mother was more like my sister. And I grew up in a very large family. So there were a lot of different dynamics that were happening in the family. But the thing about it is, I didn't learn about some of these things until 2015. So by this time, you know, when the way I grew up, the cousins, the older cousins, they were your aunts and your uncles, right? And so my grandmother was the one who would oftentimes, and her sisters, plan the family reunions. And I don't know, it's like one day I woke up and my grandmother said, Angel, plan a family reunion. We haven't had one in years. And so I called different members or cousins from the various branches of our family tree and said, I want to plan a family reunion, you know. And people were excited about it. But what I learned is that a lot of cousins did not attend. And it was basically from one branch of the family. And what I learned is my family kept secrets. There was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of sexual abuse. There was a lot of incest. And I was heartbroken when some of my cousins would talk to me. They said, I can't come because so-and-so is going to be there. And they never said anything. I can't come because, you know, we didn't get the support from the family when so-and-so was beating up on my mama the way he did, you know. And so, you know, that really affected me. I love the work that I do. I am a licensed professional counselor, have several licenses and certifications in the field of mental health and substance use addiction treatment. And I love the work that I do. I love the crying drunk because they'll tell the truth, who they love and who they hate. You know, but I love the work that I do because I just feel that the degrees and the certifications are just a piece of paper. I believe God bestowed upon me an innate ability to be able to relate to people and to help people. You know, and my best clients are those that believe in God or some form of a higher power. Because sometimes, you know, it's not about the psychoanalytic theories all the time. Sometimes it's about get on your knees and pray. You know, what we're going to do is get in touch with whatever it is you believe in, you know, because I believe, and that's for that song, you know, that there is this power that can take away and remove, you know, all of that garbage. So that you know, I'm so impressed with today. You guys are talking about wealth, generational wealth, you know, how to pass things on. Some of us have received things from family members. It's been passed down, the wealth. But guess what? The trauma can be passed down as well. There's a lot of stuff that's passed down from generation to generation that we don't talk about. We don't want to talk about Uncle so-and-so did this to my brother. You know, it's not always to the female, but sometimes it's to the male. And then we wonder, why is it that now he's doing that to his nephew? Or why is she doing this to her nephew? And so I just feel that we as a people and as mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, we need to stop this cycle. Research has shown and proven that trauma is interrelated to addiction. Now, addiction, you can have behavioral addictions, right? And you can have drug and alcohol addictions. So, you know, a lot of times when we think about addiction, we're thinking about alcohol and drugs, right? But we're not thinking about the person with the eating disorder. We're not thinking about the person with the gambling disorder. We're not thinking about the person with the sex addiction. You know, so there are a lot of different addictions that present themselves when what you're only trying to do is get rid of the pain. You know, we're triggered by a number of things in our environment, in our society. You know, this Roe v. Wade. When I heard the overturn of that, the first thing I thought about was intergenerational trauma. What I thought about was that 14-year-old who gets raped by her uncle or just someone else, you know, and gets pregnant and cannot now have an abortion unless we ship her across the country somewhere or to a different state. and so she's forced to have this child and raise this child, and more than likely with the support of some family members. But when they look at that child, what are they going to see? Exactly. They're going to see the trauma. So that intergenerational trauma is when we pass down the traumatic response of a traumatic event down to the next generation. Okay? So this 14-year-old is now 25. Okay? But during this time, because of the trauma, she may have an eating disorder. She may have picked up a bottle. She may have an alcohol use disorder. She could have a drug addiction. She could be have a shopping disorder to the point where she's even stealing. She could have been incarcerated. All right? And so this child now is going to feel the effects of that traumatic event. There could be emotional distance or detachment. I see so many couples in the work that I do. And one of the problems is he or she is not affectionate. So I'm like, well, how'd y'all get together? How'd you meet? What's going on? Well, at the time, we were like rabbits. But, it was the sex. It was the sex. It was the sex. But when it came down to, really being in a relationship, communication, and intimacy without sex, that person wasn't available. And why? Because they grew up in an environment or in a home where folks were emotionally detached. Right? So that's all they know. And so we work on trying to break that cycle, doing something different. A couple of approaches that I use, and this is not just with one of the things that I do, that's my specialty area, is working with individuals. I like to teach and train on integrated treatment practices in the treatment for individuals with co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders. We have to stop treating these disorders separately, because when we do that, we are creating, and I'm talking about in my field of work, we're just taking them through a revolving door. For example, person comes to me or to your agency for mental health counseling, and you find out in your intake and assessment that they have a substance use disorder, and then you say, oh, well, we'll take care of your depression over here, but you got to get that substance use, that alcoholism or that cocaine addiction taken care of over there. That doesn't work. We have to be able to, and we have to push for this in our community and our healthcare system, for integrated treatment practices. We have to treat these disorders simultaneously. When I do my assessments, and especially with individuals who come in with a substance use disorder, as they're saying is their primary presenting problem, I don't ask, have you ever have you ever experienced any domestic violence, any trauma, any sexual abuse? I make a statement for them to be able to tell me, oh no, that's never happened. So I ask, when was the last time that you were assaulted? When was the last time someone sexually assaulted you? And then they'll tell me, well, no, that's not a part of my story. Because a lot of times, it's like I said, people don't want to talk about it. And in our Black families, we don't talk about it. Okay? And we need to talk about it. If you know that there's someone in your family with an addiction, especially alcohol or drugs, more than likely they have experienced trauma. and they're not talking about it. So, you know, we have to find out who is that supportive person in the family that person will talk to. Am I out of time? We have to find out who that person is that they'll talk to. So, you know, my family calls me, and sometimes I feel overburdened and overwhelmed with all that I'm hearing, you know, but I believe that this is my ministry. I believe this is what I've been ordained to do. And I just pray for the strength to be there for that person. As I mentioned, I had my own struggles, you know. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. You know, my first husband was very abusive, even while I was pregnant with my son, you know, in which now he's very abusive, you know. But our relationship is such that I can say to my son, this is not who you are. You know, this is what this came through me while I was carrying you, okay? And, you know, we have to put a stop to this here, what's going on. And I just share that with you. I had a problem with alcohol. You know, I celebrated 34 years of sobriety. Thank you. And so my own personal, and when I was going through my early periods of recovery, you know, I went through a depression. I'm like, you sitting over here with all these degrees and certifications, and look at you, you're a mess, you know. But one of the things that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous taught me is that there is a higher power. Those are the steps of recovery, right? And it got me back in touch. Somebody said, what were your Sundays like? My Sundays were going to church with my grandmother, standing there all day long, okay? All day long. But that was my foundation. Then it was coming home to someone said it was, every Sunday was like Thanksgiving, you know, and then the family was there. So I didn't have a terrible childhood. You know, I had a terrible marriage. And as a result of that terrible first marriage, my second husband is just God-given, you know. But that first marriage was like, oh my God, you know, where did this come from? Duck, you know. And so I found what I thought was relieving my own pain, you know, in alcohol, in cocaine, you know. And I tell you, I am so grateful, because today I do believe. And that's why, you know, my first song was a jazz selection, right? Because I'm into jazz. And so Lakeisha said, well, you know, a lot of people are picking a gospel song. Well, it didn't take me long to think about the song that I wanted you all to play to introduce me. But that's all. One more thing. There's a book, and I forgot to bring up the piece of paper, that I would like to recommend that all families purchase, and I think it was called, You Didn't Do It. I'll give it to you all. The second thing is, there is a woman by the name of Tonia Kane, and she has written a book, and she has a video on, it's called Healing Neen, N-E-E-N. And if you Google that, you can find all of her information. This woman is from Annapolis, Maryland. She went through years and years of abuse, even as a child, through her addiction as a female, as a woman. And now she is a renowned speaker. And she talks about trauma, and she talks about the approaches of trauma-informed care to help women and men to recover and break that cycle of intergenerational trauma and addiction. So I just want to thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, audience, for being able to celebrate Miss Angel. So this topic is a passion point for me. Most people won't say this in the room, but again, I'm a Libra. Yeah, that's my vibe. I'm high functioning bipolar depression, and I too have faced childhood sexual abuse, and so I'm all of those bullet points. But some people don't know that depression is high functioning, and some people don't know that bipolar is high functioning. So what that looks like is like, oh, I'm excelling in my career. I know how to do life, but at home, I'm having a time. And I don't want to cry, but I feel like most people don't know what it looks like. And I love this space because I think we need to be educated on the effort it takes to like be able to live out loud. I didn't want to cry, but when you said that you're recovering alcoholic and as well as cocaine, so 9 months today is my 9-month anniversary of alcohol. And this topic is it's personal to me because I'm not making it about me, but I just want people to understand that, you know, it's not just your story, because you have people in your life, like your family, maybe your spouse, that don't understand the struggles of being able to function. And then sometimes it might be a bit much, but you're doing the best that you can, and so the words or the delivery might not be as healthy because you don't know the best way to communicate. But I think that's why clinician and psychology has become a passion for me. And when I pursued my graduate degree in organizational communications at Bowie State,
That's my honor.
yes, I graduated high successor 4.0, working full time, but the clinical psychology program was one that spoke to me, and I'm still thinking about it. And so when you spoke and you said your background, it made me think about if I still want to pursue it, because I think that I do have a way with people, and I do care about others. And a lot of the bullet points, I'm going to bring it back on the nose and how to show up, because I am a yes man and a people pleaser. I was. And then I had to learn how to delegate myself. And sometimes when you have to circle back and be able to say no, or hey, I can't do that, or hey, you know, I didn't appreciate your tone or your voice and how you're communicating, it's not always well received. And it might look like you're trying to assert yourself in a way that is not familiar. But like we talked about also in the program, we really have to relearn ourselves, and that comes in different facets. And so when God takes us through travel times, and what I mean by that are the ebbs and flows and the valleys. And so within those times, we're reinvented as women. We're not the same as we were a year ago. We're not the same as we were a week ago. And so I think we think that we're raised and then we're this person, and then that's adulthood, and that's not how it happens. And so I really want us to like dig into this. If anyone does have a question or wants to speak or say anything, like this segment is so important because mental health is not talked about and it's not understood. Another question topic that I wanted you to talk about is the type of language that's probably best delivered for maybe a spouse talking to someone that is a product of mental health. So if a spouse is trying to be able to delegate their message, what might be the best served tones or words that could incorporate a positive response for someone that is struggling with mental health? And why I say that is there are trigger points in mental health. So verbiage triggers a response. And so that's another thing that we might not know about. So you might be talking to your spouse and they respond negatively or get angry. And it might be because the tone or something you said triggered a past trauma or traumatic experience that has shaped them, and they don't know how to communicate verbally. So if you could touch on that, please.
Thank you. Oh, that's a tough one, right? Because, everyone is different, and everyone's relationship is different, and everybody's triggers are not the same. So I wish there was just one word or phrase that I could say, this is what you do or with what you say. But what I can say is that we need to always keep our language person-centered. We need to keep our language strength-based. We need to keep our language, honey, what's going on? I'm concerned, I love you, I see something different. Can you talk to me about what's going on? The I messages, honey, when you scream at me like that, it made me feel a certain way, right? And oftentimes we don't put feelings behind. We give our thoughts. I thought you were mad at me, but how did it make you feel? When I ask my clients, how did that make you feel? They give me their thoughts. And I listen. And I say, okay, so now how'd that make you feel? Because people have to put feelings behind it. So I think it's real important to just let your partner know what you're feeling, in a loving, kind way. And if they scream at you again and it's out of the norm for them, one of the questions that you ask is, what happened to you? Not why are you acting this way, but what happened that you're now speaking to me this way?
Does anyone have a question in the audience? I'm going to come out.
Hi, it's me again. Okay, so growing up in a Black household, it's usually hard for parents to communicate with their children. I feel like most parents just assume that like if their kids are being moody or anything, it's just they're going through their teenage phase or they're just having a moment. My question is, how as a parent do you come to your children, or like what's a healthy way to come to your children and ask them are they okay without just assuming that it's nothing or it's just just a phase that they're going through? And how can a child come to their parent and feel like they're in a comfortable space to talk to them when they need help with something?
Well, again, I think that, thank you. I think that the relationship has to be formed or developed where you are leaving space for the person to feel safe to talk to you about whatever's going on, and that there is no judgment, right? No matter what they say, there is no judgment. There is just empathy. understanding, and even if you don't understand, because, and when I say empathy, you know what I mean by that, correct? That's like, putting your feet in their shoes, how would you feel if something like that happened to you? Or, how is that, going with how they're feeling, because that's their reality. One of the things I find is, I worked with a family where all 3 kids were abused, right? But no one went to their mom to tell her what was going on, because that safe environment wasn't there, right? Mom drank. Mom drank. Mom drank. Mom had her own stuff. This was that intergenerational trauma. Mom had her own stuff that she was dealing with, right? So she didn't know how to address those things. And I think that, one of the things I recommend for families, how you do a family tree? Do what's called a genogram, right? And in that genogram, you're putting all the players, the mom, the dad, the grandmother, as far back as you can. And it's like you're doing a family tree, but what you're looking at are what illnesses did this person have? What traumas, based on what you know, what did they have going on? And then that's one way, especially with children, what we call art therapy, when we put it on paper and we help them to see it, it's sometimes a lot easier to express the feelings. Now, you don't have to do it by yourself, parents. There are therapists out there that can help you with this and give you other tools and approaches to help improve communication with your children and vice versa. But a genogram, I would think, is a good way to start. Was that helpful?
Thank you so much. I have room for one last question. Sorry. So can I see hands? I'm going to let her speak just because she didn't.
Hey, good afternoon. Keisha, thank you. I had no idea it was going to be like this. This is awesome. This particular subject is very near and dear to my heart, so, and you have said some things that has really spoken to my spirit, so I want to tell you thank you. In my family is laced with addiction. And so I never ever heard anyone say that, where addiction was present, it was most likely because of someone suffering trauma. And I thank you for that word, because it really allows me to forgive and, normalize some of the things that I've seen repeated generations. Like you said, this intergenerational thing is true. And so it allows me to, forgive, the people who I see, because I have this natural reaction to get upset. Like, why can't you just get yourself together? What is going on? But when I heard that, there's a high likelihood that they may have suffered some trauma, my heart softened. And, I thought about my dad. And my father last year celebrated his 68th birthday, and for all of my life, he's been addicted to something. When I was growing up, he was addicted to heroin. And the things that I saw as a child, I wouldn't wish on anybody. But you know what? They made me the very strong person that I am today. And I'm a natural protector of my younger siblings. It made me a natural leader. It made me a fearless mother. Those are because of some of the things that I saw my mother do, although I, felt like she was overcompensating sometimes, but never mind that. But I do have a question for you, so I wanted to say thank you for that word. The very direct question that I have for you is, how do you recognize when mental illness is in your presence, and it's not just, like Jasmine said, just not just a mood or, some other thing. When do you know that it truly is an issue of mental illness, and when we should maybe get someone evaluated and, get some help?
So there are various signs and symptoms of mental disorders, right? And some of the most common signs, number one is that change in behavior or attitude or appearance, okay? If it's a drastic, significant change that you see, there's something going on. Now, is it a mental illness? Is it we have to be careful with the labeling, but there's something, that's just saying that there's something going on. And if I observe that there's something different about you, then I want to get more information about what may be going on. That's the time. That's the time. That's what we call a screening. Right? A lot of times people want to jump straight into a diagnosis, right? But there's a 3-step process. There's a screening, there's an assessment, diagnostic assessment, then there's a treatment plan, right? But when you start noticing something different, are they dressing different? Are they sleeping different? It could be that they're sleeping more, sleeping less, eating more, eating less. What are they not attending to things that they once enjoyed doing? Where is their motivation with school, work, and home? How are they getting along with people? What's happening socially? Are they withdrawing? These are some of the most common signs and symptoms that should send off a red flag to say, this is an alert, let me see what's going on. Now, I might not tell you as my mom, my sister, or my aunt what's going on. I might not tell you I'm being bullied at school, but as that adult who is observing, I'm just going to let you know I've been seeing something different. My daughter, sweetest thing, and then all of a sudden I saw this change in her, right? She became so evil and mean and snapping, just angry all the time. And so we were in the car, and I said, what happened to you? That's all I said. I didn't say, why are you acting this way? I said, what happened? And she pulled the car over because she was driving, right? And then that's when she told me something triggered her, that she remembered a childhood traumatic event. I said, what'd he look like? Because see now, Mafia Mom is coming out, right? I got my war paint ready. What'd he look like? And when she described what he looked like, this was a cousin that I adored, who I took in. You know what I'm saying? This is a cousin that his daughter is saying, I can't come to the family reunion because my daddy, that man that she described, did A, B, and C to me. So now I'm like, how come ain't nobody tell me Joe was doing this to people? I would have never let him in my house. I would have never let him around my daughter. So now how did that make me feel? That I didn't protect her, right? But just to say to someone, what happened to you? You were once this way, that way. What happened? And sometimes, and she just pulled over and she flooded, and I helped her to find a therapist because I'm too close to it, see, I'm ready to, and now he dead, so, and so I said, well, if it brings you any consolation, he's dead,
Thank you so much, Ms. Angel.